to Lowe's Blog Talk Radio.
We are go for liftoff in T-minus 30. Hit the record button.
This is Italo from Italo's Blog Talk Radio, and I wanted to share this interview that I had with Eric DePriester. We talked about, among other things, we talked about his show that he's premiering at the Hollywood Fringe Festival. The title is TREASON, and is a parody on American politics, which coincides with the current political climate. So listen up, guys. It's called TREASON.
So we just started rehearsals last week. So pretty much my whole goal was to try to get everything out of the way that I possibly could before the actors ever entered the rehearsal space, just so I could, not be worrying about little props and my publicity scheme and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of focus on the actual work, on the art. So it's kind of going well that way. There's still a million other things that are popping up that I have to do and take care of and think about and all that kind of stuff. But I think I got most of the big worries out of the way. So now I can just really work with the actors and have a little bit of fun.
Right. So I see that you have a cast of 5, right? Is that correct? 5?
Yeah, exactly.
We've
got the nuclear family of 4 and then their next door neighbor.
Right. Actually, I remember this scene because, believe it or not, Eric, I forgot how I met you before. And the first time I met you was in the workshop that Matt Ritchie was doing, right? How to direct a Fringe show. And so when you told me the story, I was like, I've heard this story before. Oh my God, I saw the scene. So I was in the audience and they were acting it out, and I'm like, I remember that. Yeah, it was interesting. Since then, how did that help you at all? Like his workshop? I'm sure it did, but
absolutely. Well, and I did theater in high school and college, and I've done improv here and there. So I've got a general sense for performance, and I like to think that I've got good taste. I watch a lot of good stuff and have a lot of good opinions and all that kind of good stuff. But there's a lot of gaps in my knowledge where I wasn't sure how to approach this kind of scene or how to talk in this kind of way. And to be frank, I still don't know all of that entirely. That's why I have a co-director. But Matt Ritchie was just is very helpful. Just here's the way to approach the scene. Here's a creative way to look at blocking, and just kind of gave me a little bit more of a toolkit to actually approach those scenes myself.
Right. Yeah, actually what it did to me was the opposite. It made me stop in my tracks and say, you know what? I'm not ready. Not yet. I will be ready, but because my story was very this is fictional, sort of kind of fictionalized. Treason is. And mine was totally not. It was more real. So I'm like, you know what? I got to take a break. And then I just had come back from Russia, of all places, and so I was like, a lot of things in my head. And speaking of the politics in Russia, it was so weird. It was, and then the way they view American politics is really interesting. I was talking to Raymond yesterday on another interview. He says, you know what? Every nation, everywhere you go, every country has their own ideologies and views on politics. So yeah, sure, America's weird. It's always going to be weird, but so is everybody else. So there's no place in the world where top politics is not going to be, controversial and
100%. And I would say it's mostly awful. Like I'm obviously I have a lot of doubts and problems with American politics just given the play that I wrote. But I would say that even with all the problems that we have, and maybe the last couple of years we've gone down the rankings a little bit, but I would still say we're we're one of the more politically stable countries in the world, probably. But I think the difference is, at least that for me personally, when I'm traveling, like, you know, I lived in Vietnam for a year. I studied abroad in Prague. I traveled here and there. And, you know, I interacted with a lot of very corrupt governments. I was officially censored by the Vietnamese government because I wrote in a travel guidebook that at one time Saigon did not belong to the Vietnamese people. So, like, I've seen some weird shit in that sense, but it wasn't my country. You know, there's always some gap there where in America, every little evil, every little mistake, I feel it so much more directly because this is the thing that I grew up on. I was raised to believe in the power of the American government and the checks and balances and all that kind of democracy and all of that. And to see that just kind of crumbling underneath you is just so much more viscerally just hurtful. Whereas, you know, when I was in Vietnam, I could just kind of tune it out. It's, no big deal. I'm going to leave here in a couple of years, you know, whatever. So it's much more affecting here.
No, and you're right. Actually, speaking of when I was in Russia too, I felt like I wasn't able to say anything. I couldn't open my mouth and just speak freely, and I could feel it. Like even when they asked me what did I think about Trump, I was like, better not say anything because I don't know where I'm at. I don't feel safe talking about this outside of the U.S. And so it's a fine line between freedom and not being able to have the freedom of speech, I guess. Even though here we're criticized and I'm sure they're listening to our interview, and that's what I was like. Something going on with, and this never this has happened before, but especially with these topics of politics and Trump and that kind of presidential topic, I was like, something's going on with this Blog Talk Radio. I wonder, but anyway, anyhow, let's change the subject. Well, let's not change the subject, but I don't want to say any more because they probably will be like playing with my buttons from somewhere else.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Keep the FCC away.
Right. They're always censoring people.
Yep.
Anyhow, so tell me about the story. Like, what made you think about Grant Wilson and his ranch?
Yeah. So essentially, this is based on a real guy. I think I first read about it maybe 3-4 years ago, but there's a real man up in Nevada who he used to be in the armed forces. He currently has a property in the middle of Nevada, and his family is his only subjects on a micronation. And basically he does a lot of the same stuff that my character does, but the difference there is it seems like he actually has a sense of humor about it, right? So like when he pays taxes, he calls it foreign aid and makes a big display of it. But I think it's all tongue-in-cheek. I think there's an awareness that it's a joke and he's just trying to liven up his daily life a little bit. So I was very interested by that story, but I didn't really know why. I kind of was bouncing around my head for a couple of years. Just, I don't know. I couldn't let it go, but I didn't have a reason to tell it yet. And then honestly, post 2016 election, everything I've written has just been significantly darker, just kind of a reflection of my and America's general mindset. And once I was taking this playwriting class at UCLA and just kind of noodling around on some ideas, and I returned to this man in Nevada with a micronation, and I just thought, this is the perfect allegory for Trump, right? It's a serial liar who just has no core beliefs, no real principles on anything. He's just kind of manipulating whoever he can to get more power and to retain power, and just, you know, it's a desperate attempt to get attention and to get validation more so than it is an honest attempt to rule something, to make anything better for anyone. So once I kind of found him as the core character, I started building out the world around him a little bit. And, you know, I'll say that it started off this way as an allegory more so, and then the characters became real people. But the original idea was So he's the father is the stand-in for Trump, and the mother is kind of the stand-in for the Democrats, where she knows things are messed up, but she doesn't really want to do anything about it because it might upset the balance. The son is basically the stand-in for the alt-right. He's overly militant and actually believes all the ridiculous propaganda that the father espouses. And then the daughter is basically me. She's a young millennial who's upset and frightened and thinks the whole world is messed up, but she doesn't know what to do. Should she run away? Should she try to fix the home that she was raised in? And yeah, I just kind of took it from there. And honestly, more than anything, it was super cathartic for me to write. Just, I've spent the last couple of years just reading headlines and grinding teeth and just feeling alternately terrible, and then a little bit hopeful because the right Mueller report might come out. There's just this roller coaster of emotion. So for me to be able to pour all of that out into a play and then keep refining it and, actually find the work of art, not just the pure catharsis. But it was a really good experience for me just to kind of de-stress, get it all out of my system, and then refine it to figure out what exactly am I trying to say. What point do I think is important to make in today's society?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I keep going back to your the poster, and it says Treason. Obviously, it's the name of the show, but it says right underneath, "Divided we fall," and it actually it reminds me of how polarized we were or we are. Just when everybody stands for what they believe, it became such a nasty exchange of words, and it still continues. I mean, you see the news, you see every talk show, you see, and it's it's very sad because if we have friends who might not agree with our views and our political views, it doesn't mean there are enemies. It just means that they have a different opinion, right? So it's really hard to stand for any political party when both parties have done things in the past that what I mean, like there's bad history going on Republicans. Then bad history is also, that's how they started with the Democratic Party. So I did a little research too, because I'm like, okay, let me see how this all began. And it turns out Democrats were not really the Saints either back in the days. And so I'm like, oh, they supported what? So it made me question my own political views. Not to say that I was going to become a Trump supporter, obviously, but also question my own, political stand. I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's something that almost nobody is doing in today's political climate, right? It's become so polar, and I'm certainly guilty of it myself, where it's become so polarized that I can't stomach, for the most part, reading a lot of conservative news sources. And, some are more about something like The Economist or the Wall Street Journal is certainly far more balanced than Fox News. Like, they actually have some objective reporting, some actual facts in there. But for the most part, I tend to just read the more liberal trending newspapers and online articles that it's confirmation bias, right? Like, I'm searching out that sort of information because that's the sort of information that I want to hear. And part of it is a play for my own sanity, right? Where if I feel like if I watched an hour of Fox News a day, I would just feel like a crazy person. But it also, it feels like a little bit of a cop-out. Like I should be trying to engage the other side more. Like that's how we bridge this divide, right? If I keep to my sources and my conservative neighbor keeps to his, when are we ever going to agree? What common ground are we ever going to find? So it's that, it's a big problem, but I think we're all a little bit guilty of that one.
Yeah. Well, and it divides families. Like I had it was election time, I remember, and one of my cousins, he admittedly said, he's like, I'm voting for Trump. and everybody in the party was questioning him, like, why?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel kind of like, ooh, this is not good. Like, okay, let me hear what he has to say, right? And so I think I was the only one that really paid attention to what he had to say, but everybody else was like, oh, hell no! Like, what are you thinking? And so I was just looking back now, and I'm like, they're just attacking him for his political views, and we shouldn't be doing that. We're in America, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
like,
well,
we're divided. Where families are divided right now, and it's just or relationships or marriages. You know what I mean? So it goes deeper. Mm-hmm.
Well, and even if we take the premise that Trump pre-2016 election was truly abhorrent and an absolutely awful candidate, and even if we accept that premise, you need to be able to hear out your family member to understand why he supports that person, and then be able to come to some understanding. Maybe you can convince him that actually the other candidate has that interest more in mind, or
Right.
maybe this thing that you value about Trump is actually not true, or but until you actually hear that person express why they support, you have no understanding. There's no ability to have a conversation. It's just, I'm going to shout at you, and you're going to shout back, and at the end,
Right.
we're both going to be pissed off, but nobody's changed their mind.
Exactly. That's all you get is just screaming and yelling, and nobody's listening. Yeah.
Yep.
That's kind of what happened.
Not ideal for a political debate.
Not at all. And
No.
yeah, and looking back now, because of course, back then we were like, well, of course he's not going to win, obviously, right?
I was so confident.
But when he finally won, it was like a rug, under our feet was pulled, and we were like, what just happened, right? But it's not about convincing anybody. It's just expressing your opinion, and that's what you're doing at the Hollywood Fringe. And what better way to do it than doing it in the, theatrical. It's a fictional character. Well, it is and it isn't, right?
Yeah, I mean, loosely based on a real person, but he's become a fictional character. But honestly, it's like we were talking with the polarization of news sources and whatnot. Like, I almost feel like we're at the point that it's very hard for me to convince somebody, even with an objective fact, that their side is incorrect. Like, it's just, if I tell somebody an objective fact, I can say fake news, or they can quote their own quote-unquote objective factor. It's just, I feel like we've moved past the point of factual appeal, so we actually need narrative appeal. We need emotional appeal. And, I was thinking back to my all-time favorite movie. I've watched it hundreds of times. I can watch it thousands more, is The Graduate. In part because it's just, on the surface, it's just a beautiful not beautiful always, but it's just, it's a good love story. It's funny, and it's charming, and it's well acted, and it's well shot, and there's great music cues, and everything's great about it. But if you dig deeper, it's a pretty cutting satire of 1960s American culture and the consumerism and just our obsession with getting the next job and what are you going to do after college. And it's just, it was a pretty biting portrait of where we were as a nation, just kind of snuck into this, more charming movie. So I think that millions of people walked into The Graduate without having any idea that was the subtext. And, maybe they didn't change their life the next day. Maybe they never changed their lives. But that idea was slipped into their heads. It was kind of just snuck into American culture in a way that I think is a lot more effective than, just more over-the-top satire or more direct messaging. Like, I love Spike Lee. I think he's a great artist, and a lot of his movies are just absolutely excellent works of art. But I don't believe that a lot of people leave a Spike Lee movie convinced to be on a new side. I think his movies are so in your face, so direct, that you either watch it and confirm your pre-held belief, or you watch it and feel like you've been shouted at for 2 hours, and now you just, you don't like that kind of thing.
Preach that. Right.
Exactly. So, I mean, that was, and theater's a self-selecting community, so I'm not sure that I'm going to get a whole lot of attendees at Fringe that have those conservative beliefs that I would like to help sway. You never know what's going to happen, but that was the goal. Like, just try to affect a few hearts and minds if I could.
Yeah. Well, and then the great way that you presented this is a family unit, right? And that's actually what I thought when after the election was done, and I had actually a radio show, and I remember this. It was the day after the election, and I remember saying, "It's like, you know what? This is like a dysfunctional family. We have an overt narcissist on one side that's in your face, telling you what you want to hear and telling you what you don't want to hear, but it's clear and it's right there for everybody to see. And then there's a covert narcissist, which is probably worse. So I was comparing this as a family unit because it's like they're both dysfunctional. We're not getting the true story, from either one of them. And they're all blaming each other, how they were debating. And I was like, oh, my God, this reminds me of my family, how they would argue on the, on the table. And you just want to be underwater, like in the Graduate scene where he just jumps in the pool and he just doesn't want to deal with it. And he just jumps in the pool and he's quiet. He's like, I just want some quiet and peace. And please leave me under the water for a while. And that's actually kind of like now it makes sense. The Graduate, I'll have to see it again.
It's a great one.
No, I love it. Every time it comes on, I'm like, and it's such a great. Obviously, Simon and Garfunkel, I love them, and the music, but also the style of the movie and everything. But I never thought of it as being political, actually. So you just mentioned that.
Well, and I will say it's a little more cultural than political satire, but
cultural, right.
But what I love about it is it's subtle, right? It's just kind of slipping in that message just enough so you get it, but it's not over the top with it, never on the nose or anything like that. I guess maybe the plastics line is a little bit out in the open, but for the most part, it's just a very, very clever, sly movie.
Right. Well, just to recap, because the beginning of this interview was weird. Okay, so let me just remind people that this play is called Treason. It's going to be at the Stephanie Fury Studio Theater in Melrose. The tickets go on sale May 1st, so a couple of days, right?
That's right.
And so, what else? It starts on June 9th, and of course, this is part of the Hollywood Fringe Festival. So if you want to go to hollywoodfringe.org, the project number is 5804, but I'm going to put a link below so that you'll be able to just click on it and buy your tickets. Anything I'm missing?
We got 7 performances in June. Tickets are going to be $12. I think I'm going to set $9 for participants.
Okay.
We've got an original score from members of Young the Giant. 5 very talented actors. I'm very excited to bring to the stage and see if there's anything else. We get a couple of nice little design elements. Nothing too crazy with the stage design, but I think that sounds about right.
Okay, and it's 70 minutes, so it's pretty good amount. Are you trying to keep it under 70, or you still want to cut down something? Because many people put the time that they actually want to give a little bit of cushion, but I don't know if that's happening to you, but we're trying to do it.
We're reading pretty. We definitely got room to expand at this point. I want to say the draft we have right now is, I want to say 62 pages, maybe 63, and we did a table read a couple of weeks ago, and we weren't taking the appropriate time for how much pause there would be for this action to happen, and there's there's one longer music cue toward the end. So a couple things like that we would have to factor in. But I want to say the table read timed at like 54, 55 minutes. So I would imagine that the actual production is probably going to clock in a little under 70. So I'd imagine maybe like 65, 68, somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay. Right. Yeah, because you want to have some lead, some time to, I don't know if you have a big setup or not. Doesn't seem like you do, but yeah, you want to have a little cushion.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So this is your first. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, I purposely kept this set as, we want to have enough to evoke the ranch house in Nevada and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I kept it as minimal as possible, just so the setup and the haul out will just, be a little simpler.
Right. I've never been to that theater actually, the Stephanie Fury, but it looks pretty cool. So I'm gonna check it out. It's
nice
it's gonna be Stephanie Fury. It's gonna be sorry, I'm trying to read something here. Anyways, it's gonna be interesting. It'll be.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want the people to take away, I guess, after seeing this comedy?
Well, I mean, I think part is that the what we were talking about with the polarization, where maybe somebody, maybe your neighbor, maybe your family member, maybe somebody in Ohio or wherever the hell else is very, very wrong. But we're not going to solve the problem by standing off with each other. We're not going to fix anything by staying this polarized. And what we need to do is understand where the other side's coming from and just try to figure out how to work with each other. And instead of making this instead of having American politics be Game of Thrones or some political, let's just stab everyone in the back and try to get power. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Why don't we do something crazy and work for the good of the nation? Like elect leaders that actually want to change the world for the better. I don't know. It's a revolutionary concept, I know, but I'd love to see it happen.
Right. I mean, I see things like, for instance, we live in LA, and I see things like traffic being such a big deal, especially for me because I'm doing Lyft and Uber, and also homelessness, right? And so I see these things that we need to, and hunger and all this. I mean, we have priorities, and I don't know where his priorities are. But yeah, spending billions of dollars on a wall that is just going to divide even more. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
And it won't even be effective.
It won't be effective
already
because people are still going to cross the border.
Yeah, that's a great. Well, but that's, to me, that is both the character in my play and Trump in a nutshell, right? It's these big, grandiose gestures that are meant to rally up the base and incite a lot of hate and violence and support and whatever other emotions he's trying to conjure up, but in the end aren't really that effective. And I don't want to downplay some of the bad stuff he's done, because obviously the border detention and separation of families, that has been effective in a very negative way. It's been awful. It's been a terrible impact on those people and on our society in general. But the wall, even the Muslim ban, a lot of the big grandstanding gestures he's done have, either not really come to pass or just kind of floated around for a while, for as long as he needed a distraction, and then he saw another shiny object and got distracted by that one. So it just, it seems like he's not actually trying to do anything real or important. He's just trying to, he's a magician, but a very bad magician. He just keeps trying to pull a new trick out of his hat to keep everybody distracted for long enough so that he can run out the clock on his presidency, which, is very absurd on a number of levels. But that's the world we're living in.
Okay. Yeah, it's a heavy topic for sure.
Oh yeah.
And I used to say I don't like politics, or I don't like to talk politics, but I'm 45, and by now I have I'm an adult already, right? So I think, and it doesn't matter what age you are. You can be a 20-year-old and still have an opinion. So I mean, you're voting. So, and yeah, I mean, if we don't get into politics now, I mean, this is our, I guess, that's how we decide our fate, right? And it's not just two candidates you can vote for. I mean, there's so many independent candidates you can vote for. So I'm not trying to say anything, but I am. Like, you don't have, you know what I mean? You have a mother and father who are both narcissists, and so who do you go for? Well, maybe a foster parent, somebody who's not related to you. But do your research, like you say. You do your research and see what they stand for. And everybody promises things, and so we have to hold them accountable for it. That's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to argue. I used to get upset, and you have to just chill. It's just politics.
I want to get back to a point in my life that, like during the Obama years, and, I voted for him twice, but I'm not going to act like he's a perfect man. There's a lot of policies he did that I strongly disagree with. There's some precedent he set that I think is dangerous for our country. So, obviously he's not above reproach. But that said, I didn't worry about him on a daily basis, right? Like I felt like I could kind of check in on politics maybe once, twice a week, just kind of make sure that nothing's going crazy and just keep up on some of the major events. And now I feel like I have to check whatever, Huffington Post or the politics subreddit, or, I just have to go to some source at some point multiple times a day just to make sure the world hasn't ended, just to make sure that we haven't signed some disastrous missile treaty or declared war or raised new tariffs or, whatever new emergency pops up on what feels like a daily basis. I want to return to that point where politics was way in the background of my thought. I'm very tired of it being in the foreground. I want to get back to a little bit of normalcy if we can.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, we're almost at the end of the show, believe it or not. But before we do say goodbye, we actually want to play a song chosen by Eric, which is, I listened to it yesterday. It's Bill Callahan's America with an exclamation point. So before I do that, I wanted to let you say the final words, maybe shout outs, social media, hashtags, all of that stuff. Anything else you want to tell us?
So the play is called Treason, and I do just want to say for the record, as much political talk as I've been getting into, it is still dark comedy, so there are very fun moments. It is cathartic. Don't worry that it's going to be 70 minutes of me lecturing you. It's far more entertaining than that. So Treason, it's playing at the Stephanie Fury this June as part of Hollywood Fringe Festival. Preview is on June 9th. We'll have 7 shows. Last show is June 29th. And follow us along on social media at Bear Elegance on Twitter and Instagram. And that's Bear like the animal and then Elegance. I think that's about it. We got a score by members of Young the Giant, 5 fabulous actors, and hopefully a writer and producer that doesn't get too much in the way of everybody else.
I would like to thank Eric DePriester, who was a great guest. Very smart man. And great show. Sounds like it's fun for the whole family in every dysfunctional sense of the way. So Treason was the show, and we're going to be playing actually a song, an original score or original song from Treason right after this. And for those that are listening, please, once again, like my Facebook page, because that's the only way I know that you're listening and that you're interested in hearing more. And we actually have so many more shows coming up, so that's the only way to keep up. And I'm going to take it out with the score from Treason.
Well, I didn't see that coming.